Shu here in the studio. 안녕하세요.
Good evening.
How are you doing?
Doing all right, doing all right. I love the Irbu quiz. I mentioned this to you during the break, and I feel like I have to share this with our
You
listeners.
do?
So, if our listeners don't know, although I am a chef professionally, I am also a voice actor. And so my mom was being asked by one of her friends, oh, so what is your son doing lately? And she couldn't think of the word for voice acting. So, 얘는 보이스피싱 해요.
직업으로 보이스피싱. 우리 아들
what a proud
성우
mother.
일을 하는데 뭐였더라? 보이스피싱.
보이스피싱. 그거 있잖아, 보이스피싱.
That's so good. Oh, yeah, as you said. Love ajumas, love moms.
My mom,
All the way.
she's an ajumma and she owns it. She's a boss.
아주 당당하게 또 틀려요.
Oh yeah.
항상
If
그래요.
you're gonna do it with confidence.
Yeah, same as my mom. Well, in any case, you are here for food talk. And before we begin, we want to give out the questions of our 2부. 오늘의 2부 퀴즈는 역시 넌센스 퀴즈를 한번 준비해봤는데 1부는 조금 심각한 시리어스한 내용이라서 조금 재밌게 가보려고 하는데요. 가장 가난한 임금은 누구였을까요? 가장 poor한 임금. Who's the poorest king? 샵 1013으로 담은 오시면 장문 100원 이름 문자 보내주시면 추첨을 통해서 커피 쿠폰을 드리겠습니다.
Well, that's a fantastic quiz for the subject that we have for
That's
today.
right.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about, and we're going to be going into the subject for a couple of weeks. We're going to be going to, on and off because there's so much to cover here. We're just going to be scratching the surface. But we're going to be talking about 궁중음식.
Palace food.
Yeah, the food of the royal court. And we're not just palace food, but today specifically we're going to be talking about 오늘날까지 많은 사랑받고 있는 궁중음식.
Okay.
The palace foods we still eat and love today.
그쵸. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of recipes that kind of died down or maybe are just archived in the recipe books.
Sure.
And of course, there are the ones that we still love today. 약간 이 고급 요리라고 불릴 수도 있고.
Right.
Or something that we share just on 명절's and holidays. And so there is actually a way to classify these palace foods.
Right. They can be roughly kind of broken down into 4 categories. And it's not the way that you'd find like a Western menu broken down in terms of like the order they come in a course or from lightest to heaviest. They're kind of classified in terms of just like groupings, I want to say, for lack of better words. So the first is 주식류. We're not talking about stocks here.
I was just going to say financing and more.
But this refers to like our main starches. So
Okay. So like 식사.
Kind of.
Okay.
Kind of, because 식사 also usually kind of includes like some kind of 국 in there, right?
Oh, okay.
So we're talking strictly about the starch aspects, but these starches could also have their own soups. So it's kind of hard to kind of classify the classification,
Okay.
if you know what I mean.
A little
but if we break it down to the 4, you can kind of see where everything falls. Next, we have 찬품류. Now, this one is a really difficult one because it's most often translated as side dishes, but they're not really because they include things like 국, 그 전골찜, a lot of things that we kind of considered to be main courses because they're like the main protein.
Yeah.
But if you look at essentially the 주식류, the rice as the main, then yeah, these can be kind of seen as the side.
Okay. So yeah. So like 찬품류라고 하면 반찬이라고 할 수도 있는데 I mean, 국탕. I don't know. Some people, because it is side of the rice.
Exactly. It's everything that's not the rice, basically.
Yeah.
Except for category 3, 저장 발효 음식.
Oh, fermented food.
Fermented food. So that's its own category. So we're talking about kimchi and 젓갈 here.
Okay, and that's, because I mean, it is 반찬, but they deserve their own.
Exactly. Yeah,
너무
they
귀해서.
have they have such a stronghold in the kind of cultural and foothold and just in our diet as well.
Yeah.
And then you have 후식류, so dessert.
Yeah.
And 후식 is of all the terms, 후식
과자.
is the one that we still use today,
Okay.
right? 떡 and 과자. And then for the 5th one we have 차와 화채. Are you familiar with 화채?
Yeah, I was going to say, I know tea as 차. 화채라고 하면 like aid or
So I had to look this one up too because when I immediately saw this, I thought of my mom hitting me with a fly swatter with a pariche. So it's not something you hit someone out of anger. That's not pache.
I mean, you could.
You could, but it would be very sticky. So it's 꽃화 and 나물채. So it's basically it's something we don't see too much anymore. It's like usually some kind of water or like cha, like 오미자.
Like punch?
Kind of, and then it has fruit in it.
Oh,
Right,
okay.
right. So I think the closest thing we'll see today to something like that would be most similarly like a shike or like Chung과 or something
맞아요,
like that.
맞아요.
But back in the royal courts, this used to be much more elaborate, and these have much wider variety.
All right. Well, before we move on, I want to give out our quiz one more time. 조금 어려워서 힌트를 더 드려야 되겠어요. 오늘의 2부 퀴즈는 가장 가난한 임금은 누구일까요? We're getting in one message. Beggar King이라고 해야 되나요? Beggar? 가난해서 햄버거만 먹었대요. 라고 보내주셨는데요. That's close, I guess. But 오답입니다. 가장 가난한 사람이면 minimum, 가장 minimum으로 사시는 사람이겠죠. And then this is all a Korean word we are looking at. 사실 I think a lot of our 알바생들이 더 이걸 알 것 같은데요.
Oh, there you go.
네 글자입니다. 문자 많이 보내주세요. All right, let's get started. We're going to start off with the 주식류, are we?
Right. So we're going to talk about especially the rice and the noodles aspect of it because there's a lot to 주식류 that we don't eat today. Specifically things like mium and ungi, which are kind of different variations on chuk and kind of like watery forms of rice that we don't see too much today. But we're going to talk about the ones that we do kind of eat and enjoy to this day. And that comes down to just the regular rice because it has a different name.
Yeah, I didn't know what this was. You had it on the list.
Yeah. So it's sura.
Sura.
Yeah, sura is the royal term for pap.
Who
What we would
knew?
call this is like 공깃밥 or basically So 흰수다 is white rice. 팥수다 is red bean rice.
Ooh, okay.
So so of course, being the royals, they would have the highest quality rice available at their disposal, the 최상급 rice.
이거는 왕과 왕비가 드시는 밥을 이런 흰수라, 팥수라. Have we ever had 팥수라 before? Red bean rice?
I've had it. But I think I've only had it on like special occasions, like growing up.
So it's not even like a ready type of rice even now.
Sure, because like you would most likely see something like wondukong or like gangnamkong in
right.
or komunkong in rice before you'd see
Certain
pat
beans.
in there, right? Yeah, and I think pat is nowadays we've got some photos up here, and yeah, it looks a lot like hunmibap. But it is eaten, but it is not necessarily as celebrated as it was back then when it was kind of between this and 흰수다 and our next one 오곡수다.
Oh yes,
Which is much more common nowadays.
Right. Okay, so pasura is basically just red bean with the rice.
That's right.
Yeah, nothing too fancy.
And I'm gonna assume too. I didn't look too much into this aspect of it because we have a lot to cover today. But with the color hong, red, having so much significance in Korean, I imagine it has something to do with certain holidays as well.
Yeah.
Probably. Oh no. So with 오곡수다. That's a type of rice that you would eat at 정월보름, so the first full moon of the year.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So that includes 맵쌀, which is the non-glutinous rice, the regular short grain rice that we have.
Okay.
찹쌀, the glutinous rice.
The best.
차조, glutinous millet. 조 is the small little yellow grains. You eat a lot in Jeju-do.
I love those.
Yeah, 콩 and 팥.
를 섞어서. 아하, 오곡밥이 된다고 하는데요. 지금 와서도 if you want to get the instant rice, 오곡밥이 조금 더 비싸요.
It is, and it's great. And that's the one I'll always go for if I'm in a rush.
You feel healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. If you need to feel healthy in 3 minutes, that's the best way to do it.
It's true.
Next, we have 골동반, which is something we definitely eat a lot of today,
Oh,
but you
okay.
might not know that name because that's the term for bibimbap.
Oh, is it? Interesting. So this is 한자, right? 골동반.
Yeah. So bibimbap is 한국어, and 골동반 would be 한문. And so but the important thing to remember about this is just that the royal food is very white. It is not red.
Oh, I've heard.
Yeah.
왜냐면 이 고추장이 나중에 like it was developed later or it came over later or
Yeah, there are some scholars who would argue with you fervently on that point, but the general consensus is that it came in around the 15th century
Okay.
to Korea.
Ah,
So it wasn't part of that long lineage of royal dishes.
Oh.
And so bibimbap or 골동반 rather is a dish that was usually reserved for the last day of the year. Because it has all these different things that you mix into it, that's kind of taken all the things metaphorically from the year past and eating it all at once so you can start the next year fresh and anew.
Oh, that's good. 궁중에서도 이런 것도 하시네요.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to throw everything in the fridge or the 창고, we should say.
Yeah, just goes to show it doesn't matter how wealthy, how powerful you are, everyone's got a little backlog. in their
That's so
kitchen.
true. 다만 고추장은 넣지 않다는 점.
That's right.
Cool.
Next we have 잣죽.
You know what? I was craving some 죽 this weekend. 이 잣죽이 사실 비싼 걸 처음 알았어요.
Chat is insanely expensive
Yeah.
for what it is. It's because pine. I'm going to get into trouble because I know I'm getting the number wrong, but it's something like 15 years until a pine tree can develop pine nuts. It takes a really long time
Long processing
for
time.
pine trees to be able to develop the pine nuts. And even then, they still, I think to this day, mostly have to be harvested by hand.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So definitely royal food. So what they'll do is they'll grind the chat and 채에서 받쳐서, so they'll sieve it so it's nice and smooth.
Uh-huh.
And so you get this really kind of creamy, really nutty flavor in there.
Yeah, I don't know about you. 사실 죽은 어떤 분들은 약간 걸쭉한 느낌을
Sure.
좋아하고 어떤 분들은 진짜 크리미한 느낌, 부드러운 그런 느낌.
What are you a fan of?
Yeah, I like 걸쭉, just because I like to 씹어 some
Sure.
some 쌀 in there
right.
or 떡 in there. But then 이런 like a 코스 요리, 한식 코스 요리 나오면 it is quite fine.
Absolutely, it is very,
Creamy.
very refined.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
잣죽. I didn't know that was a 궁중 food.
It is, and especially it probably is to this day, given how expensive chat is.
Yeah, I bet. Only the royals.
Yeah, this next one is definitely not one that we eat today, but I wanted to bring it up because it's so interesting. 행인죽.
What is hanging?
행인 is the seed of the chadu. Of the
plum?
Yeah.
Oh, the seed.
The seed.
You eat the seed?
Yeah, so it is something that's actually done in other cultures too. So you have to roast it or cook it to the point where the outside comes out. If you eat it on its own, it's quite toxic actually. But you can eat the inside kernel of a lot of stone fruits, peaches included.
Oh.
Yeah, they just had to be cooked and processed in a very kind of slow, elaborate way, which the royals would have had access to.
Yeah, I think once you become royal, you kind of get bored with the 일반. 이 자두도 다 먹을 수 있는 거잖아요.
Sure.
근데 그 씨까지는 드시는 사람이 별로 없어가지고 별의별을 실험을 해서
It's such a foodie thing,
yeah,
right?
it so is. Wow. 행인죽. I'm pretty curious to see how that would taste.
Yeah, and the next one we're kind of going back to ones that we still see to this day. 흑임자죽. So black sesame juk has a really striking color. It's meant to be good for the hair and said to give you a lot of yunki, a lot of that shine in
All
that hair too.
right. Yeah, interesting. Getting some of that biotin maybe.
Yeah, there you go.
They were really concerned with their cosmetic love as well. Well, let's move on to some noodles, shall we?
Yeah, so this first one is one that we kind of eat today, but it goes by a different name back then, 장국냉면.
장국 냉면.
장국.
Is it just regular 냉면
So
or
장국, I had to look this one up. So 장국 is like 장, meaning like
intestines?
No, as in what is it?
Market?
No, why am I forgetting
There's
that?
so many.
Like fermented soybean, like
장.
된장, 간장.
Aha.
So it's just a
sauce.
really simple. It's just a really simple broth made from beef and a little bit of 간장.
Interesting. Okay, simple does it for them too.
Yeah. So, but I mean, it's the beef. I mean, the beef.
그렇죠.
Because the beef is a star.
맞아요, 맞아요.
Right. The 동치미 would be added during the winter months, but by and large, the royals would eat it as 장국.
Yeah, and so this time they would also use 메밀국수. 그때도 있었네요.
Yeah, so 메밀 has always been a really important staple crop here in Korea. Even there are even regions in Gangwon-do that are famous for it as well. Some to this day that still tout the fact that we were the farm that supplied the royals with 메밀. I'm sure half of them are maybe telling the truth.
김치국 냉면도 있는데요. This is also not just a regular 김치국.
No, so again, back then they would use 양지머리, which
Wow.
is which is the part of the brisket, the really rich part of the brisket, and they'd use that for 육수, and this would also be the place where that 동치미국 would also go in there as well. Wow. Yeah, and then again, 메밀국수, not regular, not 소면, not wheat noodles, 메밀.
Yeah, are you a big fan of having kimchi in your cold noodles? Some people like it just hot, like 김치찌개를
Sure.
드시는 분들도 있고, 아예 냉면에 김치 썰어서 드시는 사람이 약간
I
싫어하는
still have
분들도
a really soft spot for like kimchi bibimbap with like a lot of 참기름 in there.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's like my idea of 초딩 입맛.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
That is very true. 사실
with 소면. Yeah.
맞아요.
Right,
소면.
right.
It 끓여s in like 2 seconds.
Sure.
Super easy. 우리 큰 이모가 솜씨가 조금 있어요. She's really good. 금손이라고 하죠. And she whipped, this, it was just kimchi, sesame oil, a little bit of gochujang, and some gogi.
Right.
That's all you need.
It's so good.
And it was
just hits
신세계.
every spot.
Yeah, it does. 완전 너무 맛있게 먹었는데요. All right, well let's get to some hot. Maybe I guess it could be cold too. 온면도 사실 I thought it was hot because of 온. 근데 사진 보니까 some people eat it cold too.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
I assumed, because onion as well, that it would be hot too.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but again, this also uses that same brisket, 양지머리, was it a broth to that as well. And and also oftentimes has 고기 산적, 산적 being a type of 전. It's a 전 that's usually put on a skewer, and then that's also served with the noodles as well. And wanja, which are the traditional Korean meatball.
Oh, yeah. I'm not a big fan of gogijeon, and so I'm not a big fan of wanja.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I like gogi just as it is, like 구웠, barbecued. I don't like the...
So this is why you gave up your spot in the royal court.
Yeah, that's right. 이것 때문에.
It's true. Actually, if you go through the list, a lot of these things include 완전 in there. So, if you don't like the 동그랑 thing, you might have had a hard time dining in the royal courts back in the day.
Yeah. Well, speaking of 온면, there's 난면 too.
Yeah, so this one is an unusual one because most of these dishes thus far have been 메밀-based 국수, but this one is actually a wheat-based noodle, but not just a wheat-based noodle, an egg noodle, which again is pretty uncommon for Korean cuisine.
I was
going to
say, more like Southeast Asia and things like that.
Yeah, so it's a softer noodle, and it's got a little bit of chew to it as well. And so this is something that it really stands out from the crowd in terms of the other types of noodles that you tend to eat in the royal courts.
도미면은 뭘까요? 도미면 마지막으로 약간 조선시대 고급 요리라고 하는데.
Yeah,
도미 the fish, right?
도미 the fish. Yeah, so it's meon that would be served with 도미찜, and 도미 even to this day, it's most often miscategorized as red snapper, but it's sea bream, which if you know fish, that's actually a much more expensive fish and harder to get. But I think most people are really familiar with the term red snapper.
Okay, but they're quite different.
But they're similar looking. But tomi is where it's at. It's so rich and luscious that they even knew back then to that day that that was the good stuff.
Yeah, and I mean it's not just the fish and the noodles as well. 뭐 은행도 들어가고 호도 견과류까지 들어가는 여기서 또 잣가 나오네요.
Yeah, so this is where it kind of lost me because I can't imagine like all those flavors are
it's
so
고소한.
Yeah, right. Definitely 고소한. Yeah.
And then with fish and some noodles as well. Yeah, but 지금에서도 맛있게 드시는 사람들이 있기 때문에 오늘 저녁 메뉴를 고르셨다면 또는 내일 저녁을 약간 if you want to feel a little bit experimental 도미면도
Sure.
한번 해보는 것도 괜찮을 것 같아요. So as we talked about some palace foods today, we want to leave you guys with our quiz or give the answers, should I say. 넌센스 문제. 가장 가난한 임금은 누구였을까요? 노익상님께서는 김치말이 국수요. 임금님은 김치말이 안 드셨나요? 라고 보내주셨는데요. 김치말이 국수, is that the answer? Or are you just giving in some good old palace foods? 김치국 냉면. There you go. 8158님. 거지왕인 줄 알았는데 내자군요. 알거지왕인가요? 알거지왕? 이번엔 정말 모르겠네요. 유유라고
We've stumped some
보내주셨는데.
people
I guess so.
today.
알거지왕 아닙니다. 5466님. 최저임금. 저도 최저임금에서 벗어날지 못하네요. 몇백 원 올려주는 이 최저임금. 정규적이 무색하죠. 몇백 원 올려주고 물가는 얼마나 오르는지라고 보내주셨는데요. That's right. Minimum wage라고 하죠. 최저임금. Yes! 1385님. 최저임금. 네, 미니멈 킹이라고 보내주셨는데요. That's right. You got it. 1219님께서도 정답. 최저임금 맞습니다. Yes! 커피 쿠폰 드리겠습니다. Congratulations to 1219님. And once again, thank you very much to our king, Food Talk Sheshu.
Always a pleasure.